I don't know what I was expecting when I started my trip to Tylerville, but it was not what I thought I would find when I got there. I did some research as I sat in the booth at Waffle House. Between mouthfuls of waffle and bacon, I studied the place I was getting ready to set out to. Tylerville, established in 1890, was a farming community. It had a small main street, a drive-in movie theater, and a bowling alley where someone who was a big deal on the pro circuit had started his career. Mostly, what it had was cows, farms, and a lot of weird stories. Tylerville had become something of a black spot, and it was believed that a cult had taken over the town. The articles talked about some kind of incident that had happened in 2018, in which the townspeople had been slowly integrated into a nameless religion that had made the town its home. The town's population had dwindled significantly, and now most of the farms were worked by, and I almost choked on my waffle when I read the name, Bright Church. I looked at the name for a few minutes, making sure I wasn't imagining it, and when the waitress asked me if I was okay, I told her I'd just seen something that had startled me, and she snorted. "You kids and those phones, it's a wonder you don't see more startling things than that." She left with her coffee pot, and I kept reading. Sounded like Bright Church had some of the farms in the area under their thumb already, and the town itself was likely under its control too. I would have to be careful if I went there asking questions, and I decided that it might be best if I prepared for the worst. I finished up my meal, leaving a tip that made the waitress purse her lips, and got back on the road. Tylerville was about 3 hours from here, and when I stopped to gas up, I found myself thinking about the pictures that I'd seen of the place. It was very picturesque, a little middle American town that was probably as dependent on the crops coming in on time as the farmers were. I thought about how there was likely to be a farmer's market right on Main Street, and how in the fall there would be pumpkin patches and harvest festivals. The women probably didn't wear homespun dresses, and the gentlemen probably didn't wear suspenders and wide-brimmed hats. But they might. I reminded myself that this was a cult town, like that one in California run by the Indian guy, or the one with the yellow delis in them. It was possible that I would be marked as an outsider when I arrived. It was also possible that it would be a shell of its former self, and that I'd have to walk through a ghost town if the roads were bad. I thought about a spooky town full of shadows and strange people, and it gave me a shudder. I'd be going either way. I needed to get my answers, but I really wished I had a gun or something in case things got bad. I had a knife under the seat, a long one for hunting, but I would have felt better with a gun. I shook it off. I was probably being silly. The people I had always seen on the Bright Farm show had been Amish-looking, and I suppose that they would have implemented that kind of dress code onto the people of the town. I switched on the radio after driving for a bit, wanting to think about something else beyond the mystery of Tylerville. Turns out, that wasn't going to happen. "Hello, friends. Brother Thomas here with Bright Farm." The truck honked at me as I swerved into the other lane, and I evened out as the surprise passed. They were a big business around here, I supposed, so of course there would be commercials. "Are you looking for quality? You looking for a brand you can trust? Then put your trust into Bright Farms brand milk. Here at Bright Farms, we have the happiest cows and the cleanest grass for our cows to produce the best milk for your table. Looking for eggs? Then look no further than Bright Label for your breakfast needs. Bacon, sausage, juice. We've got everything for your table. Everything." It was strange to hear the voice that had told me to hurry a few hours ago, selling milk and eggs, but I knew that Brother Tyler had been a big part of the church. After all, they'd let him host the show, so why wouldn't they let him sell their milk and eggs and stuff? I felt like I was forcing myself not to hyperventilate, and the strangeness of the situation only got weirder the longer it went on. "Are you looking for something particular? Someone particular? Are you still looking for your mother, Angel?" A car behind me let out a long, low honk as I slammed on the brakes. Luckily, I was on a 4-lane road in some backwood bypass, because if I had been on the highway, I would have probably caused a major accident. I managed to pull over, getting some dirty looks from the cars behind me as they sped off. I was actually hyperventilating now, not sure what to make of all this. None of them had ever used my name before. They usually just called me Dear, but Brother Thomas had just used my real name. Don't get into an accident when you're so close to the answers you want. She's here, Angel. She's here, and all you have to do is find her. Well, that's not all you have to do, but I'm sure you'll figure that out once you get here. You're still coming, aren't you? I nodded, but realized he probably couldn't see that. Yes, I responded, a little impressed by how little my voice shook. Fantastic! I'm sure you'll get a warm reception in Tylerville. See you soon. The channel was static as I tried to catch my breath, and when I finally felt safe to drive again, I pulled back onto the road. It was another hour before I saw the sign for Tylerville. Tylerville, 60 miles. It couldn't be that remote if they still had road signs up, right? I started to wonder what it would look like as I drove closer to Tylerville. The pictures online had looked very nice, very folksy. They had also looked familiar, though I couldn't say why. It felt like I had been to Tylerville before. It was a fuzzy memory, like when you remember going somewhere as a baby, but I certainly remembered some of the town, despite having never been there. When it came into view, I saw it first from the top of the hill. Tylerville was no militia camp, no cult indoctrination horror town. It was beautiful. Tylerville looked like a postcard that you find at any Midwestern gift shop. The buildings were mostly brick and wood, the roofs slated or metal, and in the center of the town was a building with a big clock tower jutting out of it. Even from here, I could see people milling about on the street, going about their day-to-day lives below me. It looked peaceful down there, a place I might like to live. I had to remind myself that this was the place the Bright Church had taken, and that it might not be altogether safe for me, or for the people milling about down there. I put the truck in drive and went down to see if the natives were friendly. As I drove into the town, it continued to seem normal enough as I rolled down the street. Most of the women were indeed wearing dresses, but the men I saw favored button-down shirts and slacks rather than suspenders. They were walking up the sidewalk, stopping to talk to each other, but I didn't experience a lot of other traffic. It didn't take long before I realized I was the only car on the road, and the closer I got to the town center, the more people began to take notice of me. Most of them waved, some just stared, but I began to feel like a spectacle. They were smiling as they waved, their grins reminding me of the one that Miss Mary had always worn, and they waved at me with slow and deliberate swings of their elbow. As I came to Main Street, the shops watched over by the clock tower in the center, I saw that it was like some open-air farmer's market. There were stalls everywhere, people selling quilts and preserves, fruits and vegetables, even a few of them selling chickens or lambs in cages. The people buying were the ones dressed in slacks, but the ones selling had an old-world look to them. These were the ones in suspenders and homespun dresses, and they looked more like the people I had seen on the show when I was a kid. Something else I realized, though there was no way it could have been. Tylerville was the town they sometimes visited for certain segments of the show. Miss Mary or Brother Thomas would sometimes go into town to talk to people, a mechanic or a policeman or someone, and Tylerville was an exact replica of that town. I didn't know how that could be. Tylerville had only existed in this capacity for a few years. The Google search had said as much, but that didn't change the fact. The little brick police station, its bricks painted white and black, the market stalls in the park at the center of town, the mechanic shop I had passed with the flapping sign that read Docks. It was all from the show. I didn't know if the church had changed the town to reflect the show, or if the town had just been a dead ringer, but I knew it was the same. I parked my truck and decided to head out and try to get some answers. "Excuse me," I asked as I approached one of the booths selling jam. "Well, hello, young lady. Would you like some jam? I have blackberry, blueberry, strawberry, peach. Actually, I was hoping you could give me some directions. I'm trying to find Bright Farm, but I don't know where I can find it." The woman at the booth continued to smile unnaturally, looking as if she hadn't heard what I had asked. Her dress looked like she'd made it out of curtains, and it was complete with a bonnet that looked like something off of one of the dolls I had had when I was a kid. I couldn't tell if she was old or just bent, but she didn't seem too worried about that either. "Here, try some of these preserves. One taste and you'll want a dozen jars to take home with you." "No, thank you, ma'am. I need directions to the farm." A few minutes later, I walked away in exasperation, the woman wishing me a good day. It was like that everywhere I went. Every booth I stopped at held polite people, but they were only interested in hawking their wares and not in helping me find Bright Farm. It honestly seemed like they were intentionally changing the subject whenever I brought it up, and I wondered if this was what Thomas had been talking about when he said that getting here wasn't the only thing I would have to do. Was part of the journey trying to decipher their words or make them tell me what I wanted to know? I decided finally that I would just go to City Hall and have them tell me which farm was owned by the Bright Church. They would still have to file permits and things, and I could get what I wanted if I asked them there. I was walking across the lawn, heading for the building under the clock tower, when I saw someone backing up to my truck. It was a tow truck, and it was pulling away with it as I ran, waving my hands. The cop was another smiling fellow, writing something on a notepad as I came up to ask him what was going on. "I'm very sorry, miss. You were parked in a no parking zone. I had to tow your vehicle. Don't worry, it's going to impound. You can pick it up there." I looked around, not seeing any sign that said anything about a no parking zone, and when he handed me the ticket, he tipped his hat and gave me a good day. I snorted when I looked down at it, seeing it was for $50. I hadn't seen a ticket under $100 in so long that it was almost as jarring as the towing itself. Whatever, I thought, I'd just go down to the sheriff's office and get my truck back. I was walking down the sidewalk when someone came out of an alley and began walking towards me. He didn't look like the rest of them, and that drew my eye immediately. He was wearing a hoodie, and though I couldn't see his shirt, his pants were pajama material, favored by those in scrubs. They were dirty, the cuffs muddy as they hung around his slip-on shoes. His head was down, but it was pretty clear that I was his intended target. When he came even, he spun suddenly, so we were walking side by side, and spoke quietly to me from beneath his hood. "You're in danger. You need to come with me before they take you off the street." "I'm sorry," I said, not quite understanding. "You are in danger. Outsiders aren't permitted to walk freely for long, and you've walked longer than most." "I'm just going to the sheriff's office to get my truck," I told him, not sure why I was telling him anything, but suddenly feeling very nervous. "Trust me," he said, and I saw a pair of uniformed officers round the corner as he began. "If you go into the police station, you'll never come out again. Come with me if you want to be in your right mind when they take you to Bright Farm, if that's still your intention." "How did you—" I started, but he suddenly cut right down the same alley he had come out of, and I was left to either follow him or not. Excuse me, miss," one of the officers said. "We need you to—" I broke and ran before I could think better of it, following the man as he fled from the cops who had suddenly come after us. They broke off chase a handful of turns later, and I was left hoping that I had made the right choice as I followed my unknown savior. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story? Or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad, Unicorn Hollow, and Army Dude for being our Spooky Ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our Spooky Skeleton contributors. And thanks to Oh Snap, Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Grim Reaper, TomBoiTopUwU, and Queen Sheebah for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. And a big thanks to Scott Donahue for being our Ghostly Writer tier contributor. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. My time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.